For most of its 7 decades in power, China's ruling Communist Party has laid out its blueprint on how to move the country forward through a series of 5-year plans. But what do they entail, and how successful have they been? These plans are the backbone of China's development strategy. The first one, drafted in the early 1950s, was modeled after the Soviet Union's economic development plan and included personal advice from Soviet leader Joseph Stalin himself. At the time, the Communist Party had been in power for only a few years, and China was just emerging from the Korean War. With Soviet expertise and investment, the party made increasing China's industrial capacity its main priority under its first 5-year plan. Between 1953 and 1957, China embarked on nearly 700 industrial projects. It launched the first Chinese-made car, the nation's first homemade fighter jet, and completed a monumental engineering project, the double-decker Wuhan-Yangtze Great Bridge.
Folks, this is the South Chinese Morning Post explaining China's 5-year plan that map out the government's priorities for development. I'm going to come back to this as we'll watch a little bit more as we go along. But I wanted to get started and introduce this channel. This is All Minus One. I am Bill. If you just happen to catch this, please like, share, subscribe. If you enjoy the content, all that good stuff, you know the thing. Go check out my locals page if you would, the Rumble and the PeerTube. Also, Subscribestar. All the links will be in the description, as well as a BitChute, which I am slowly getting back into. Remember as well that I do have a live show, The Ends Justify the Memes. That is every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Sometimes we have special shows, but generally every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, The Ends Justify the Memes on DLive and YouTube. That is a separate channel. Again, links will be in the description. It is also on the YouTube page. If you're not watching on YouTube, the links are in the Rumble description or the PeerTube description. They're all there, or if you're watching on locals, you can find it in there as well. So let's get into it, guys. What am I talking about? Well, for the next week or so, I wanted to talk about the Chinese. The Chinese in the Chinese century, that is the 21st century, is the century of China. The 20th century was the century of America, and before that, the 19th century was the century of the British Empire. So what does this mean? Well, this means a great shift in global power, and this means the United States will be put in a much different position than what it has known over the course of the last 100 years, being the world police and the world economic leaders. So, from Wiki, we have the Century of Humiliation, and this is something the Chinese do not like to talk about so much openly, but is a reality. The Century of Humiliation, also known as the 100 Years of National Humiliation, is the term used in China to describe the period of intervention and subjugation of the Chinese Empire, the Republic of China, by Western powers, Russia and Japan, between 1839 and 1949. Now, if you recall, back to the South Chinese Morning Post there, they said in 1950 they started developing their plans. The Chinese had this 100 years of humiliation, and they said, you know what? We're going to have a 100-year plan, which I'm going to get into within this video today. So they have plans by 2050 to be the world dominant leader, and they are pretty much on their way by 2030. And it looks like they are 20 years ahead of time. By 2050, they probably will be the complete world leader. They will be the head of all the UN talks like we are now, and they will be doing the world policing, interestingly enough, if such a thing goes on. If the world policing goes this way, guess what? If you have wrongthink, you might be sent to the re-education camps. This is why when we often talk about civil war and those things, I believe that it will happen, because this isn't a phenomenon of the United States in isolation, folks. We're not in isolation. The existence of a sovereign state government isn't really a reality in the global world order that has been in place since World War II. You have to understand that. We have to be very clear. The United States has been in charge and has been the economic and military arm of this, but those things are about to change. And as we speak, we are destroying our military and our economy, and it is socially engineered. It is on purpose. Now, you might say, Bill, you can't say that. I can. Is it a speculation? Absolutely. Is it a evidence-based speculation? 1,000%, especially given all of the writings of the globalists over the years and what they have to say about their long-term plans. And their long-term plans are essentially to completely get rid of nation states and have a one-world government. And again, right now we're kind of in this in-between stage where it's an illusion of sovereignty and an illusion of one-world government. It's some sort of amalgamation between the two. But if I had to say we were under one thing or the other, I would say it is under a one-world government. And again, I have talked about this ad nauseum in other videos. So let's keep moving. The term arose around 1915 in the atmosphere of rising Chinese nationalism, opposing the 21 demands made by the Japanese government on their acceptance by the Yuan Sikai, or Sikai, yeah, I guess, with the Chinese Nationalist Party and the Chinese Communist Party, both subsequently polarizing the characterization. So here it has a history, nationalist in 1920s and 30s, dated, excuse me, dated to the Century of Humiliation in the mid-19th century, on the eve of the First Opium War, amidst the political unraveling of Qin Chinese that followed. So, and it goes through the events historically and how this unfolded. And of course, we know China was occupied. There was a lot of disturbance. America got involved. There was the Boxer Rebellion, of course. All Marines know the name of Dan Daly, who I believe, if not mistaken, got a Medal of Honor during that period of time. There's also Smedley Butler. So let's go down here. This is from The Diplomat. This was from January 2015. Are we living in a Chinese century? Is China truly the world's number one? And does it even want to be? This seems like a very naive question. Of course it wants to be. The stated goals of communists are to expand communism across the globe to every single individual. Reports released by the IMF and the World Bank International Comparison Program show that when measured by purchasing power parity, China overtook the U.S. and became the world's largest economy before the end of 2014. And I have covered this before in the Chinese banking systems and how they have outpaced the United States. The only thing that is not in favor of the Chinese right now is essentially the recognition by global governments of who has the world trade standard. Once that changes, which it will in the next 5 years for certain, the way we are inflating, we are going to hit a period of hyperinflation and economic crash, and maybe everyone else will keep accepting the dollars, but things will start to get phased in, especially as China becomes more powerful, and they'll go, oh, well, China's economy is stable. Let's use the Chinese yuan, and let's do that. That's likely what's going to happen, and then China will start, building up its military power and justifying its military actions via the UN and whatever else, much like the U.S. has done over the centuries, or sorry, the decades, I should say, the last century nearly, not quite there yet. First is China really the world's largest economy? And if so, why is China so uneasy about the reports that make that claim? Second, has the Chinese century really come, to use international relations jargon, have we seen the beginning of a true power transition between the U.S. and China? Third, does China mean to challenge the U.S. through its recent diplomatic and military moves? A related, though broader question is simply, what kind of international role does China truly seek? Well, let me explain this to you. Most of what you see, especially at the period of 2015 between uh, China and the United States, as far as diplomatic relations go, were farcical. It was the United States basically saying, well, as long as we keep outsourcing to you, you guys can pretty much do what you want. You just keep giving us cheap goods. Recall, as the globalists like to point out, that the world is going to be destroyed in 10 years. Irreversible climate change because of fossil fuels. We in the United States have dropped our emissions more than any other nation without the Paris Climate Accord, and yet China is allowed to do whatever it wants because it needs to catch up. No one who is a global environmentalist, like the Greta Thunbergs of the world, is pointing to China. And those who may be, like Bjorn Lomborg, they are basically chided. So let's get this straight, folks. These aren't environmentalists. These are opportunists who wish to point only at the Western nations to basically hobble themselves in order for other nations to rise themselves up. And they don't really care about the earth, because if they did, they would be in China right now trying to protest. Of course, the CCP would have them taken away, but that's a whole other story. So let's go down a little bit further. Let's first look at why China generally dislikes the reports and claims that China is now the world's largest economy when measured by the PPP. The general belief is that China is trying to avoid the cost that comes with accepting a new role as number one. I don't think that they would care. I just think that if they were told to do something like go start wars in the Middle East by, folks who run the globalist organizations, they would probably be like, it's not really in our interest. We're dealing with our own Muslim issues in our nation, and we're doing quite well with it. We're just neutering them and harvesting their organs and putting them in concentration camps. Pretty sure that would be the Chinese style response, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. As Stiglitz points out, I guess that's how you say that, these potential costs, including paying more to support international bodies and increased pressure to take an enlightened leadership role on issues such as climate change. In addition, China may be wary of the U.S. reaction to the change. The U.S. ain't going to do anything about it because half of our people want to cut their junk off right now and claim that they're the opposite sex while claiming that there is no such thing as gender. The U.S. will do nothing about it because we will not have the economic might to do anything about it. The U.S. will not do anything about it because we will be knee-deep in a civil war. We're already in that war as far as a Cold War. We already have skirmishes between factions. We just do not have governmental bodies fully involved yet. They do prop up one side of those factions, don't they? However, there are counterpoints to this argument. For one reason, China holds a rather positive attitude toward international bodies, and its involvement in intergovernmental organizations has been rising in recent years. Yes, because the goal of communism is to spread communism all across the world, whatever flavor, shape, or form that it is, and to maintain power and control of all people. And therefore, you want to get your fingers, your hands a little dirty with the NGOs. And look, guys, the people that run the NGOs, they're all commies too. Look who wrote the UN's charter. I'll probably be doing that, covering some of that after I cover this for the next few days. Take UN membership dues as an example. From 2006 to 2007, China's UN membership dues increased by 42%. When it comes to the overall share of membership dues, China's share has risen from 2% in 2005 to 5.1% in 2014. More than doubling in less than 10 years. Interestingly, the country that owes the UN the largest sum of dues is the U.S., which had unpaid assessments totaling over $800 million. Well, considering that we house the UN in New York City, And we do all their basically military peacekeeping, war fighting, not declared war nonsense. Um, yeah, I'm just not seeing why we should pay them, especially since NATO doesn't pay out us very often. As for China being weary of leadership on climate change, that too is changing. During the UN's climate summit in 2014, China voluntarily pledged to reduce its carbon intensity by up to 45% from 2005 levels to 2020. But what have they actually done about that? So why has China been so reluctant to accept findings that requires return on our original question? Does China truly count as the world's largest economy? Well, let's go through all this. That's only 58% of U.S. GDP for 2014. Given this fact, China has issues with the credibility and acceptability of the PPP statistics. Except for this was written 6 years ago, before the coup. And now the coup is implemented and the Western world has purposefully destroyed their own economies, and literally purposefully, for no real reason, because the pandemic had no justification to do the things that we did, and any very high level epidemiologists would say the same. And the WHO even suggests not having lockdowns. They require that as a last resort. Meanwhile, China dealt with 2 or 3 months of this, locked everyone in, did whatever, and business as usual. Wuhan, as we saw at the first of the year, was bumping, right? They were out there partying, having a good old time. China will just continue on, guys. It is the West that we need to be worried about. And of course, we can continue to go through this article. I have other articles to get through. This is quite long, keeps going on and on and on. If you wish to educate yourself more deeply on the topic, this is from thediplomat.com. Are we living in a Chinese century? Is China truly the world's number one and doesn't even want to be? That is from January 23rd, 2015. So, excuse me, guys, having a little bit of a phlegmy day. New York Post here. China's secret plan to topple the U.S. and the world's superpower. February 8th, 2015. So again, 6 years ago. In 1995, Michael Pillsbury, an expert on China who has worked with the U.S. President Nixon and has, he writes, arguably had more access to Chinese military and intelligence establishment than any other Westerner, was reading an article written by 3 of China's preeminent military experts about new technology that would contribute to the defeat of the United States. It was in this article that Pillsbury first saw that the term assassin's mace, which referred to a weapon from Chinese folklore that guarantees a small combatant victory over a larger, more powerful opponent. The article described goals including electromagnetic combat superiority that would allow for naval victory and tactical laser weapons that would be used first in anti-missile defense systems. They also discussed jamming and destroying radar and various communication systems and the use of computer viruses. By the way, Mr. Pillsbury here wrote a book on this. You can go find on Amazon. There are lots of articles of his. We will probably come across them again and looking at this. As far as these technological weapons, we do believe that potentially on the Chinese-Indian border-ish, they were using microwave weapons against the Indians. This was just a few weeks back. So it's hard to say. They could be using these. They could not. It's hard to say if they're developing them or not. But when you get into intelligence and you're reading reports and whatever else, you have to understand that the way this works, guys, is misinformation abounds purposefully. And most true information is tightly guarded by only a few hands, generally speaking. And so you are on what they call a need-to-know basis. And if you need to know, you will know. Otherwise, there is a good enough or secondary story, or you just have your orders, right? You do as I say. So it says, in time, Pillsbury began seeing the term assassin's mace with regularity in Chinese documents. In the military context, he writes, Assassin's Mace refers to a set of asymmetric weapons that allow an inferior power to defeat a seemingly superior adversary by striking at the enemy's weakest points. At first, he considered these statements aspirational, but as the U.S. intelligence analyst translated documents over time, he came to see otherwise. The Assassin's Mace, he came to believe, was part of a cunning and much broader strategy, a 100-year-long effort to overtake the U.S. as the world superpower. The point of Assassin's Mace, which Pillsbury learned, the Chinese were already spending billions of dollars to develop, was to make a generational leap in military capabilities that can trump the conventional forces of Western powers, but to do so incrementally, so that by the time they achieved their goal, it would be too late for the U.S. to respond, much less reverse. Well, first off, New York Post, let's talk reality versus your framing. Your framing is that the United States is a sovereign nation that does what it wishes to do, according to the will of the people. This is an utter lie. You need to get over this, all of you out there listening. That is not what the United States is. The United States is a corporation run by other corporations and NGOs looking to find a world government of maximum power and control. Now, did it start off that way? Absolutely not. But that is what it became under FDR and later on after the winning of the Second World War. What does that mean? Well, it means that the United States follows these NGOs, like, the Council of Foreign Relations, that is owned by the Rockefellers, created by David Rockefeller. They listen to the World Economic Forum, as Joe Biden and John Kerry have basically talked about building back better. And John Kerry affirms that the Great Reset of America is already happened and continuing to happen and will happen under the Biden administration. Now, there are dozens of other organizations like the World Monetary Fund, the World Bank. There is like the Club of Rome. We can get into the papacy's hands in this, the Jesuits on that side of things. There are all these secret organizations. Of course, there are little places that John Kerry was a part of, just like GW, called Skull and Bones. There are organizations all over. Some of them, for the most part, for most people, are just fraternities and clubs. On the other hand, they are dictating and colluding, if you like to use the lefty terminology, with each other how to shape the world. There is the Rhodes Society, Cecil B. Rhodes, who created the Rhodes Scholarship. Pete Buttigieg is a part of that. Remember William Jefferson Clinton, that is old Slick Willie. He was a Rhodes Scholar as well. The Rhodes Society's plan is to have a Anglo-Saxon and American union, a union between the UK and the United States, where the United States is brought back under the crown. These are all things that are influencing our leaders in power, and many of them like it because they know that it excludes everyone else. And when we look at studies like the former Princeton study, which I've covered on here several times, we can see that it is the like big tech, it's big corporations, it's big banks, it's the NGOs that dictate everything, and the will of the people is out. Laws that are being made, kickbacks, whatever else is going on within the federal government of the United States are all being dictated by everyone except for the people. Make no mistake about it. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, I'm just saying, keep that in mind as we continue. And the New York Post act like that we live in an actual sovereign nation run by the people. And I know a lot of people are still under that illusion. It's time to get over that. So here it says, China duped us. In a sense, the new book, 100-Year Marathon, is Pillsbury's mea culpa. I'm not sure what that means. He already admits that as a key influencer of U.S. governmental policy towards China for the past 4 decades, he had long been one of the many in the federal government pushing the U.S. toward full cooperation with China, including heavy financial and technological support under the belief that the country was headed in a more democratic free market direction. And that was the hope of Nixon opening things up. I don't think that was ever the hope. I think that was the esoteric hope, the hope on the surface to the world, to the plebs, right? And then there is the esoteric hope, the hidden hope, which was, oh, no, China will become powerful. We will build them up, and these world systems will come into place. See, America has an out and excuse not to be the leader and beacon of liberty if we fail. And once we fail here in the United States, then they can go, see, capitalism doesn't work. Even though you guys have been highly socialized since the early 1900s, capitalism doesn't work. And pathetic, stupid people will believe that. Unfortunately, most normies will believe that. Some people will get it. Looking back, it was painful that I was so gullible, he writes. Yeah, most of the people out there are so gullible, man, and you're no different. And that's another thing, folks. You need to stop thinking that folks in the government themselves know what in the hell they're doing, because half the time they do not. I worked for government for a long period of my life, right? I was in the military, worked for county government later on at sheriff's department. They're people. They're highly incompetent, just like you and me. Stop thinking of them as gods. They are not the smartest, most brightest, whatever else. Now, the elites believe that of themselves, but trust me, they're just as stupid as you are. Pillsbury notes that he and many other Chinese experts were taught early on to view China as a helpless victim of Western imperialists. That goes back to this, right? To this Century of Humiliation. By the way, this same mindset is the mindset that they are teaching everyone now. They are teaching folks the same thing about Islam, right? That they're just weak, and the Crusades were all about, the evil Christians. Yeah, well, until the fall of the Ottoman Empire, that thought never even existed in the world, right? It wasn't until like the 1920s that narrative started to come about. The Muslim world knew exactly what it was and made no apologies. Now he says he has come to consider this view, which he now believes came about as a result of international deception and misdirection on the part of the Chinese and the most systematic influence and dangerous intelligence failure of American history. We believe that that the American aid to the fragile China, whose leadership thought like us, would help China become a democratic and peaceful power without ambitions and global dominance, he writes. We underestimated the influence of China's hawks. Every one of the assumptions behind the belief was wrong, dangerously so. For decades, the U.S. government has freely handed over sensitive information technology, military, know-how, intelligence, and expert advice to the Chinese. Indeed, so much has been provided for so long that there is no full accounting. And what we haven't given the Chinese, they've stolen. All of that is true. Now, the next part talks about China as a superpower by 2049. I'm not going to read that because, again, I have other stuff to get to. But this guy was either naive or he is 1,000% a liar. The fact that he wrote a book about this suggests that he is not a liar, that he was naive. And that's okay. We all make mistakes. We all are naive about things. We all are dumb. You live and you learn. The problem is that most of the folks who are within the government, like I said, are more naive than you would believe. It is like folks that I know who work within government, and I'm talking about the federal government, work around it, work in orgs, and they're all conservative, libertarian type orgs, and they think, as I was telling someone the other day, Carl Benjamin, that is Sargon of Akkad, is some alt-right extremist. It's like, you're insane, dude. He's basically the same thing you are. But they get told stuff and they believe it. They don't research it. They don't look into it. And no one thought about this. No one thought it through. What do we do if we give the Chinese all this information and power? Would we have done this with Russia? Did we do this with Russia? Funny how we still point to Russia, who's still recovering from its Soviet Union, as the big boogeyman, yet China's okay. You think this isn't purposeful, folks? I can tell you right now, start looking into corruption in the UN, and you will find very quickly how many things were done in the name of China, including money laundering, where the Chinese have paid off folks. Remember the whole Hunter Biden scandal? That isn't alone. They pay off academics over here to get intellectual property rights. The State Department prosecutes these folks. You can look this up. I've covered it again before. Over the 150 some odd videos I've made in the last 6 months, it's in there somewhere. I can promise you. Let's keep going. So this is from The Blaze. It says 5 false assumptions enabling China's 100-year plan to overtake America. And this was right after that article, February 23rd, 2015. It says, what if the Chinese government developed a 100-year plan? Here we go. Based on ancient warring strategies to counter American hegemony and ultimate take over her in the entire world. Well, yeah, when I started this last Friday, started on this topic, the first thing I read was a quote from Confucius about training your children. All right, looks like I'm going to have to read it this way. That is the thesis at the heart of the chilling new book by a member of Washington's foreign policy and national security establishment for over 4 decades, who is perhaps America's foremost expert on China. So I'm not going to rehash that. Based on his extensive interactions with China officials, examinations of internal Chinese military documents and other materials, and a sober examination of facts, Pillsbury argues that the 100-year marathon that America has become duped into aiding China's peaceful rise. No, it really hasn't been duped. You were duped, dude, as well as a lot of idiotic people in the government just listening to the government and trusting the government. This is why we need to focus on the scaling problem. This is why we need to go back to local communities, because once you become so big, you tend to have your head up your butt. You like the smell of your own farts. I'm telling you right now, no one should ever have that kind of power. The kind of power that the people in Washington, D.C. have. You become disconnected. You see this a lot with officers in the military versus enlisted. Depending on who they are. Some officers are good to go, but there's always a division there because there's no fraternization between officers and enlisted, even though there's always a little bit, but no real fraternization. Like, you're not going to go out to the bar and drink with your lieutenant. It's not going to happen. Or your captain or your major. But you will be in the field with them, and officers tend to keep to themselves more often. Unless they're Mustangs. That is a former enlisted gentleman. But you get this a lot because they are the elite, if you would, as far as who dictates to who. And the idea of officers and non-commissioned officers goes back a very long time between who was the aristocracy, automatically an officer, a gentleman, and who was not, but was competent enough to run a unit. And that would be your NCO, your non-commissioned officer. Anyways, engagement brings complete cooperation. The 4 decades now, my colleagues and I believe that engagement with the Chinese would induce China to cooperate with the West on a wide range of political problems. It hasn't. Trade and technology were supposed to lead to a convergence of Chinese and Western views on questions of regional and global order. They haven't. In short, China has failed. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump there. Failed to meet nearly all of our rosy expectations. From thwarting reconstruction efforts and economic development in war-ravaged Afghanistan to offering lifelines to embattlement anti-Western governments in Sudan and North Korea. China has opposed the actions and goals of the United States government. Yet, we keep working with them. I mean, they put our president in the office. Beijing Biden's there, right? Oh, we got the Chinese, true nominal show pressure. True international Shabda pressure. True international Shabda pressure. What do you say? True international Shabda pressure. However you transliterate that is a bunch of nonsense. And that dude is bought and paid for, guys. No doubt. And we know that. We know very clearly that if you pay attention. Let's see. China is on the road to democracy. Yeah, no. The idea that seeds of democracy have been sown in the village level became conventional wisdom among the Chinese watchers in America. So this is just stupid. This is just stupid. The people in the countryside of China who are extremely poor are not going to come into the cities where all the military power is and take over. They don't have any say in anything. The Han Chinese who run the CCP do, though. Man, I swear we hire idiots on purpose who have a bunch of pedigree. They have a bunch of letters behind their name. They have the right schooling. They intern with the right people. Absolute morons, though, because they stay in that echo chamber. They keep telling themselves the same thing over and over. Oh, this is the way it's supposed to be done. It's like them in the Constitution. Like, they bring up the Constitution when it benefits them, but the minute it doesn't, and usually it doesn't benefit them. Usually it's some nebulous vagary about the Constitution and nothing really true about it. Anyways, like many working in the U.S. government, I had heard the democracy story for decades, blah, 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 blah. In any case, that's just not going to work, guys. The thing that happened in the USSR was the Russians allowed its own people to start to be exposed to things that weren't censored. China has not yet done that, and therefore democracy started to flourish. And in the later years, because of the draconianism in Russia, they were not basically snatching up people in the middle of the night like they were in years prior. China's still doing that. China's never stopped doing that, folks. The fragile flower. According to Want China Times, this is what the DF-41 looks like, though Blaze couldn't independently confirm the photo. Okay. In what appeared to be a forthright exchange of views, the Chinese scholars during the 1996 U.S. delegation to China, of which Pillsbury was a part, we were told that China was in serious economic and political peril and that the potential for collapse loomed large. Now, I want to remind you, that was in 96. I brought these articles up the other day. Here is one from the Federalist about why the 21st century will not be the Chinese century. That was the same year, 2015. And then this other one from National Interest, also from 2015. And the Chinese century apparently is already over. Again, these bigwigs and fat cats who make, 6 figures a year and whatever else could look at little old me who's basically indigent and I could tell you a lot better. But they won't listen to me because I don't have the right little letters behind my name. I don't have the right pedigree. Having an eye looking out to the world and an ear open and searching and going through all the information and data and then, making correct predictions over and over again means nothing because, well, they just had to believe in this process. They had to believe that China would just become democratic and they would just get better. And eventually things would collapse because they couldn't prop themselves up. Yeah, they're using the same monetary policy we're using, but for some reason you didn't think that the housing market was going to crash in 2008. I later learned that the Chinese were escorting other governments and American academic business leaders and policy experts on these purportedly exclusive visits. They were to receive an identical message about China's coming decline. Many of them repeated these revelations in articles, books, and commentaries back in the United States. For example, a study published by the influential Rand Corporation listed 10 facts that would cause China's shutdown and even collapse. Little misinformation. Seem to recall bringing that up like 5 minutes ago or something. What the hell? What's wrong with these people? For decades, we have seen such arguments in this op-ed piece, news stories, and books that have dominated our national discourse about China. Yet the hard fact is that China's already robust GDP is predicted to continue to grow, I guess it's supposed to be grow, by at least 7 to 8%, thereby surpassing that of the United States in 2018 at the earliest, according to economists from the International Monetary Fund and so forth. China wants to be and is just like us. In our hubris, Americans love to believe that the aspirations of every other nation is to be just like the United States. This, I think, is nonsense. people talk about this. China does want to be like us, and then it wants power. It's mostly concerned about the power in the local areas that it, surrounds them. So North Korea, South Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, Tibet, India, the former, Russian Federation states, Soviet Union states, the South China Sea, Australia, Japan, Malaysia, all those areas, yes. Otherwise, it's more worried about bolstering up its economic power and might, and military power and might. So, in any case, we can go on there. China's hawks are weak. And, yeah, again, misconceptions, folks, misconceptions. But that was from The Blaze. That's 5 false assumptions enabling China's 100-year plan to overtake America. And again, cannot read the whole thing. I'm already at 40 minutes, and I got a lot more. But a lot of this is just where you can find information. This is from 2016. How to destroy the American, from the United States of America, the 100 years planned. So this is the Dauntless Post. This is just a little independent blog. It says, I wrote this in 2009, and it was true then and is more true now. It also tell you who besides Obama is responsible for the Muslim takeover of the world, including the United States of America. So I will come back to this actually when I pick this up on Friday, because it's going to kind of interjoin with some of the things that I had to talk about. Here, guys, if you want to go check out over on Asia Society, that is on YouTube, you can have China and the U.S., one belt, one road, and a 100-day plan. This was June 14th, 2017. And this is literally people talking about, the relations with China, the state of the Sino-American relations. Speakers include Chinese ambassador to the U.S. and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Well, why would he be talking to China? Wonder if it has anything to do with those NGOs or that powerful and influential cabal, that oligarchy that runs the world. And so forth. In any case, I'm not going to play this. I just want to show you, though, like, the information is out there if you want to watch a boring lecture about these guys talking about their trade relations. Here we have from some rando dude. I don't know about NBC, ABC covering this in their daily news programs. Never saw it on CBS. However, after watching 6 videos on the BRI, Americans should stop complaining, me for one, about things being made in China and shipped around the world. For once, join the group, the New World Order. Yeah. Nah, I'm good, dude. But that's what that comment says, so, whew. Very, very good on that one, brother. So let me mark that because I can come back to that. Chinese not-so-secret game plan, or China's. This is from Newsweek magazine, 2015. From the Washington Post, China has a plan to rule the world. This is from 2017. In a friendly exchange of words between Trump and Xi Jinping this month softened the edge of a Chinese economic and military buildup that a recent study commissioned by the Pentagon described as perhaps the most ambitious grand strategy undertaken by a single nation state in modern times. It's 2017, folks. Black Pigeon Speaks talks about this a lot, or Felix Rex, his other channel. So living over in Tokyo, he tends to cover things in the Asian world. From The Economist. The Economist is a hit or miss magazine. About 10 years ago, it wasn't bad, but it's gone pretty left. The Chinese century is well underway. Many trends that appear global are, in fact, mostly Chinese. It's October 2018. When I mean they went left, they've always been left, guys. I just mean they've gone much further left. They definitely weren't free marketeers, per se. They were more of neoliberals, and neoliberals are left-wingers. In short, despite what the dictionary definition of a neoliberal is, a neoliberal is a corporatist. Corporatism is a form of leftism. The end. Not going to get into it. Someone will comment in my chat at some point and be like,
Bill, you're totally wrong. They're the same thing.
no, they really are. You don't know how to judge things on first principles, and the end. Not conversing about it anymore. It says, as China has regained economic leadership, the center is now retracing its footsteps toward the east. Japan's economic boom made it the second largest economy in the world, pulling the center north. And European industries in America rise drew an economic center of gravity into the Atlantic. In 180, China and India were the world's largest economies. And I kind of talked about that in the last one. It kind of comes back to that it's coming back around. I don't know about all that, but it says, when scholars of international relations predict that the 2000s will be a Chinese century, they are not being premature. Although America remains the lone superpower, China has already replaced it as the driver of global change. There is one economic metric on which China already ranks first. Measured at market exchange rates, China's GDP is still 40% smaller than America's. Doesn't matter what America's GDP is if our dollar crashes, though. And we have no military, which, guys, we're not going to have a military soon. Biden's making sure that's being ripped apart and destroyed. And those who are leftist in the military, who are in charge, people in the Pentagon and on down the chain, they're purposefully weakening the military. However, on a purchasing power parity basis, can I speak today? On a purchasing power parity basis, which adjusted currencies so that a basket of goods and services is worth the same amount in different countries, the Chinese economy became the world's largest in 2013. Although China is often grouped with other emerging markets, its performance is unique. Its GDP per person at PPP has risen tenfold since the 1990s. In general, poor economies grow faster than rich ones because it is easier to catch up when starting from a low base. Yet in other countries that were as poor as China in the 1990s, purchasing power has merely doubled. So again, I will come back to this. But one thing I do want to say is it's stupid to claim that poor countries catch up to richer countries because it's easier to grow. No, poor countries tend to have less market restrictions. They tend to have freer markets often, or what free markets they do have are very free, while the controlled economies are very certain particular sectors. What we see in industrialized nations and first world nations, if you would, is the mixed economy, the markets that are centrally controlled, and therefore the markets become sluggish. That's what we see. And there's all these excuses why they have to do this, to control things so they don't get out of hand, so this business doesn't go under. Well, that's part of the market, guys. You make a mistake, businesses go under. You have to let that happen. That's part of the correction. But Bill, that's painful. That hurts the economy. Well, death is painful too, to those folks who lose others, but it's part of life, guys. We cannot protect everyone from pain. In fact, according to Jonathan Haidt's research, that actually makes you a weaker person. When you do that with children, we helicopter parent and whatever else, then we get generations of children who become adults who basically can't accept their feelings being hurt and can't be productive in society. Every single one of them would have died out a millennia ago because they wouldn't have made it in the world. They just simply wouldn't have made it. And if there was no government, if everything collapses, who's going to protect you then? That's my question. Those of you asking for the big state daddy to do such a thing for you. So this is transnational.live. It is China's 100-year plan is all about development, not deception. Well, that is from 2018. And I will cover this next time, as well as this Forbes article, this article about the 100-year plan, and this one as well. Again, to get multiple perspectives. But not to get too long, as I am going on 50 minutes now. I need to wrap up because I plan to do this again Friday. And next Tuesday and probably next Friday, because there's a lot of information out there about this, and you guys need a proper perspective. You need to understand that there's a lot of people out there saying a lot of things, and a lot of them are incorrect. Now, what makes me correct? Well, I could be wrong, but judge me based on my predictions. Judge me based on the information that I'm presenting to you. Judge me based on the nature of humanity in our history. And we can see what China is doing. And the idea, and trust me, I used to believe this idea, the idea that we were opening up China and somehow they were going to become capitalist nations is sort of absurd when we didn't put any restrictions on that. We didn't say, well, you have to stop doing this practice. You have to stop doing that. You have to stop doing this. Now, maybe we sort of did, but you think China really did that? Look at what just happened last year with the whole coronavirus thing and the Wuhan lab and those who were trying to be whistleblowers about the incident. And we still have lefties who are trying to claim that the lab had nothing to do with it and it was a natural occurrence. From what I understand, that is completely, utterly wrong according to the genetics. Yet the Washington Post last year at some point back in the summer or fall, released a whole video on YouTube about how it was wrong. You should see the comments in that video because they were all like, screw you, Washington Post, and there's no way. No, that was a level 4 gain-of-function lab, and Fauci was a part of that, folks. He helped open that up. You can find that information. It's pretty clear. A little inside baseball, my wife's work, she works in a nonprofit for animal advocacy, trying to get rid of basically nonsensical animal testing, like the testing that we know does nothing for humans, but yet they still do it. They've helped defund the Wuhan lab. They helped do that under the Trump agency or Trump administration under Matt Gaetz. And once Biden came in, they found out recently, oh no, there were still funds coming in because somehow someone behind their back funneled the money in through another tertiary organization. And they resolved that. But see, this is that whole globalist thing. Why are we giving money to them? Why is someone in our federal government still shipping money to them? They're uncovering this stuff, and folks like me and other people out there with much bigger channels talk about it, and we are called the conspiracy theorists by bringing you information because that information isn't approved by the party, by the United States monoparty, by the Republicrats, the rhinos and the dinos, the neolibs and the neocons, the globalists, the NGOs. That's what all this is about, folks. It's always about that in the end. In any case, I made my point. I rambled long enough. Hey, go over to my locals page. Please go over there completely free. I don't have any paywall or anything set up. Just go over there. Follow me because I put my videos up there. That way, if YouTube takes one down, it can be there. I have Rumble also, PeerTube, and BitChute. All of those links are in the subscription. If you guys want to donate, I have monthly donation tiers on Subscribestar to a point where if you do donate, I will converse with you. If you want to do such a thing, I mean, you can cuss me out for 30 minutes if you want, or we can have a civil conversation, or if you're a big donator, you know, you can have a once a month, hour-long conversation. I also have a lower tier for AMAs because I would like to interact with my audience. And, you know, I'm not here asking or telling you guys to give me money, but if you want to give money, you appreciate what I do, then please do. It helps me and my family out. Also, live show, The Ends Justify the Memes. D-Live and YouTube every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Tomorrow, because today is Tuesday. Tomorrow on Wednesday on The Ends Justify the Memes, I will have Kit Cope on. Kit is a 4-time World Muay Thai champion. Really cool dude. Met him several weeks ago. Before I even knew who he was. I was like, dude, you should come on my show. Like, you sound like you got a good head on your shoulders, talk about things. I like talking to interesting people. Then I found out he's a 4-time Muay Thai world champion, was on The Ultimate Fighter and some other stuff. So we'll get into it with him, with all that. But, hey guys, this has been All Minus One. I I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, share, subscribe, and I wish you all well.